Viridian, the Green Guide, written by Clouds, read by Distracted by Books. Chapter 59, Past. Why, hello, Aizawa! Nedzu chirped cheerfully. He was already waiting with Tsukashi in a back room at the police station when Shota arrived, a steaming cup of tea in his paws as two more cups sat ready at the table. Shota wanted to be surprised that the rat had beat him there, but the more he thought about it, of course the rat would be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed with curiosity after receiving an appropriately cryptic text in the middle of the night. He thrived off of investigation and chaos. I, for one, would like to know why you sicked Nedzu on me in the middle of the night. Tsukashi groaned tiredly. Not that I don't appreciate the tea, but some warning would have been nice. Shota, thoroughly annoyed, pulled the notebook Viridian had given him from his capture weapon and slammed it on the table. Explain. Now. Tsukashi looked at the notebook like it could explode at any moment, as if Shota would stoop that low just because he was angry. It was kind of insulting. He would be much more creative. Tsukashi glanced between the book and Aizawa a few times. I'm sorry, Eraser. I'm confused. What is this? That, Shota jammed a finger at the notebook cover, is a full investigation into a lead that you told me was a dead end. The symbol of evil, ring a bell? It might sound a little familiar from the only interrogation we managed to get with a berserker before he disappeared from police custody. Tsukashi's face hardened. I already told you, the symbol of evil is dead. I already confirmed it with the last hero that fought him. There's no way he could have survived. Shota glared at him. Then would you care to explain why our berserkers show the same exact symptoms as All for One's previous victims? There was a loud moment of silence as Shota glared at Tsukashi and Nedzu's shocked faces. Then Tsukashi was grabbing the notebook, frantically flipping through it as he tried to prove Shota wrong. There's sources in there too, Shota pointed out, just in case you're still stubbornly insisting on keeping your eyes screwed shut. Nedzu had stood to look over Tsukashi's shoulder as he read. Where did you get this? Shota sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Viridian. Tsukashi looked up at him in shock. I thought you were going to try to arrest him. Shota raised one eyebrow skeptically. The kid's smart enough to write that? And you think he's not going to think of a way around my fighting style? He hit me with a laser pointer. Tsukashi had at least the good graces to hide his chuckles. Nedzu didn't, but Shota hadn't expected him to. A few minutes passed with no sounds, except for the flipping of pages and the occasional shuffle as Nedzu's whiskers twitched in excitement, or whatever that rat was feeling at the moment. Finally, the two of them reached the end of the notebook, and Nedzu took it from Tsukashi and shut it with a snap. Well, that is concerning. So, there's not any holes in his research. Shota didn't phrase it as a question. He had read through the notebook himself, and the kid was nothing if not thorough. Have you read the sources he referenced? Only in passing, Nedzu answered. To be honest, many intellectuals are blinded by their biases, which means that topics such as quirk transfer are often regarded as nothing more than legends and fairy tales, and any researchers who pursue them end up as laughingstocks within the community. All this to say that your vigilante has basically compiled every source one can find on the topic, and there are so many better respected discussions on the topic of quirk theory that I must admit I myself hadn't even considered quirk transfer as a possible consideration in what seemed to be an almost routine drug ring investigation. Well, it's not routine anymore, Shota said. And if All for One is as dead as you believe, Tsukashi, then that means that either the quirk has been transferred or the villain factory has enlisted someone else with a similar quirk. Honestly, at this point, I don't know which of those options would be worse. But you're sure he's dead? Tsukashi and Nedzu shared a look before Nedzu spoke up. With quirks such as All for One, it is difficult to have a true guarantee. Of course it is, Shota grumbled. I just want an explanation of why it fell to a teenager to pick up our slack and make this connection. Because knowing the villain factory's ultimate goal doesn't truly change that much about how we go about our investigation, Nedzu said calmly. We had already assumed they were going to continue their experiments. The only difference now is that we know to be prepared if villains show up manifesting multiple quirks. Which is a difference, Shota countered. If we're going to be dealing with monsters that are capable of wielding multiple quirks, we're going to need more heroes as backup, both combat and rescue, considering we know exactly how destructive a berserker can be with just one quirk, as well as a plan of how to explain the existence of them to the media, considering that even most professional researchers dismiss this whole situation as impossible. Admit it, this lead changes things. Wasn't Viridian going to stop looking into this case? Tsukashi asked. I thought after what happened with Queen Bee's last host, he would. When the kid blames himself for something, he doubles down to try to make up for his mistakes. Shota rubbed the bridge of his nose. It's part of what makes him such an effective vigilante. And why we should make his capture top priority, Nedzu declared firmly. This research is spectacular, and I would love to take him under my wing. But so, I expect, would All for One. Thankfully, the child seems to have taken due care while researching to make it seem as though his interest in the subject is purely academic. But All for One has proved to be a dangerous enemy for anyone to make. Considering what that villain was able to do to the symbol of peace, I am loath to think what he would do to an untrained and unprotected vigilante. What he did to... Shota felt a chill wash over him. He's the reason All Might is spitting up blood and has to retire to UA? Viridian is trying to pit himself against that? Okuwa groaned as he woke up. Had he fallen asleep on the floor again? Every time he did that, he swore to himself that he would never do it again. And yet here he was. Oh, what time was it? He reached for his phone, his hands knocking almost painfully against the cold metal bars as he blindly searched for it. Wait. Bars? His eyes flew open and Okuwa sat straight up as the memories flooded back in, only to groan again and hold his head desperately as his head started spinning. Yeah, those drugs, they can be a pain. Okuwa whipped around and immediately regretted it as the world turned upside down again and he started throwing up. Whoa, they really did a number on you, huh? They don't usually give them that much, but you were probably all hyped up on adrenaline trying to escape, huh? It's all right, just let it out. After what felt like a few minutes hurling up his guts, a feeling he hadn't missed from his days of going to wild parties, Okuwa finally drew in a shaky breath and was able to actually look at the person who had just spent the last few minutes softly giving him encouragement and waiting for him to finish throwing up. He didn't know if he could really call the guy his cellmate, considering that they were technically separated by a wall of bars. But he was definitely a prisoner, and he'd been there a while if the thick layer of dirt on his skin and the rags that passed for his clothes were any indication. In fact, the only part of him that could be called clean was his stark white hair, but considering that it seemed to be made more of a vapor than anything solid, Okuwa guessed it didn't hold dirt like normal hair did. Hey, the guy gave him a crooked smile. Feeling any better? Okuwa chose not to answer that question. Where are we? His cellmate shrugged. No idea. Somewhere in Japan, I think, since most of who they brought in speak Japanese. I don't like it when they bring in tourists. It seems like it's always a lot worse for them, since there's no way of explaining things to them. Ogawa tried to ignore the dread pulling in his stomach. What things are you having to explain? What are they going to do to us? His cellmate shrugged. I don't know exactly. That's mostly up to the doctor and sensei. I'm sure you've heard a lot of fun possibilities from your time in the other cells. Ogawa looked at him suspiciously. Other cells? I just got here. The guy's eyes widened in shock. You didn't go through the other cells? Ogawa shook his head and his cellmate looked conflicted. They must have something in mind for you already then. It's probably why they took you, actually. I mean, lucky you. Most of the time when the doctor doesn't know what to use you for, you'll have to stay in the cells for longer, so, at least you'll get out sooner. But I'll also go through whatever hell the doctor has planned for me sooner, Ogawa said numbly. Yeah, his cellmate winced. This is, kind of the last stop before you know. He thought he was starting to understand. Yeah. Cool. So, you're here too. So does that mean you're almost out? The guy laughed awkwardly and rubbed the back of his neck. Unfortunately, no. I think Sensei just likes torturing me for some reason. See, I've been really friendly for as long as I can remember, so even though I've been here longer than pretty much anyone else, as far as I know, they leave me here so I can befriend everyone right before they're ripped away from me forever. He laughed bitterly. You'd think I'd have learned my lesson by now, right? Nothing wrong with being friendly, I guess. Ogawa tried to be comforting, but in the current context, the platitude just felt like ash on his tongue. My name's Ogawa, by the way. What's yours? To his surprise, his cellmate shrugged. I don't know. You know how I said I've been friendly for as long as I can remember? Well, I actually can't. For me, this cell is basically it. It's all I've ever known. Oh, Ogawa wasn't sure how to respond to that. Was there an appropriate response to learning that the person you were talking to had basically grown up in a cell awaiting human experimentation? Somehow he didn't think Hallmark made a card for that. Most of the people who pass through here call me Kumo, though, he said cheerfully. It's 'cause my hair kind of looks like a cloud, so yeah. Cool. Ogawa nodded politely. It suits you. Kumo laughed loudly. Thanks. I'd like to think I liked my real name just as much, right? Yeah, Ogawa chuckled. Who knows? Maybe you hated the last one and Kumo's an improvement. I hope not, Kumo said seriously. I would hate to think that this was an improvement over anything. Oh, right. Sorry. Ogawa looked at the floor. Why had he even joked about that? It was obviously a sensitive subject. He couldn't even imagine what it would be like if he suddenly just couldn't remember anything before his abduction. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring down the mood. Kumo shrugged. I mean, I'm used to it by now. Have you ever thought about getting out? Ogawa asked. Escaping, finding out who you used to be? If he could convince Kumo to help him, the two of them would have a much better chance of escaping than either of them would alone, right? Obviously, it would be better to wait a bit and figure out what the defenses were, but from what Kumo said, Ogawa didn't think he had that kind of time. I'm pretty sure that's why they wiped me. Kumo smiled sadly. At least, I'd like to think I tried escaping so many times and made myself such a pain in the ass that they had to make me forget what I was trying to get back to. But you still got your quirk, Ogawa pointed out. I mean, it might be kind of illegal, but honestly, wouldn't prison be better than here? It would be. And believe me, I would use my quirk to escape in a heartbeat, Kumo explained. If I could remember how to use it. Ogawa gasped. They wipe me every time I figure out how it works. Yeah. Kumo gave a wry smile. Or at least I'm pretty sure they do. It's part of why it's so hard to tell how long I've been here. They could have wiped me yesterday and I just wouldn't know. Ogawa huffed. That sucks. Yep. Kumo leaned back against the bars, separating their cells in a way that was probably somewhat close to comfortable. So, Ogawa, why don't you tell me about the outside world? I've been pretty curious about these animals. I think they're called cats. End of chapter.